Sansa, arrival. We came home at first light on the first day of August 5500. 10 years older, a little battle-worn, and doing my very best to stand like a queen instead of the girl who once raced through these halls with tangled hair and no sense of consequence. Northern winters have had their long dominion here, stern, patient, utterly without mercy. Yet the air still tastes like home when you breathe it deep enough. I find that comforting, though it does rather feel like the land is watching to see if we are equal to what comes next. The keep stands broken, scorched stone, drowned yards, and silence where life once roared. But the North does not teach despair. It teaches endurance, duty, and the stubborn sort of hope that plants roots in frozen ground and grows anyway. So I suppose that is what we shall do. The people we brought. We Starks returned not as scattered children of misfortune, but as something resembling a proper house again. Myself, Sansa, Queen in the North, with Bran, Arya, and Rickon at my side, each of us shaped by roads we never would have chosen, yet somehow survived all the same. Our cousin Jon came too, once Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, now determined to serve as my hand, which is either a tremendous comfort or a deeply alarming level of responsibility for one man who has already died once. He also insists he is our diplomatic bridge to the Dragon Queen in the south, which feels reassuring in theory. With him came his dearest friends, Samwell Tarly and Gilly, who between them possess more loyalty, courage, and practical sense than most noble courts combined. Little Aemon, once carried south in Gilly's arms and now proudly claimed as Sam's own, arrived bundled in furs and optimism, which is frankly the correct way to enter the North. And of course, Hodor and Old Nan came home with us too, the steady pillars of memory and kindness who somehow endured every storm that tried to sweep the rest of us away. I suspect Winterfell remembers their footsteps best of all, and truthfully, so do we. The beasts. Our direwolves kept their faithful vigil at our sides, vast, solemn, and far too intelligent for comfort, including my own lady too, who carries herself with such regal dignity that I sometimes suspect she believes she is the true queen in the North. I do not argue the point. Old Nan arrived with her pair of trained forest cats, sleek little tyrants perfectly suited to the cold, and entirely convinced that Winterfell now belongs to them. They patrol the battlements as though hunting ancient curses, and occasionally my breakfast. We brought great shaggy northern horses as well, broad as siege engines and happiest when the wind is trying to flay the skin from your face. They snort at mild weather with visible disappointment and seem personally offended by sunshine. And, sensibly, we trundled home with livestock enough to stretch our provisions. Things we brought. From the south, we carried all the sensible things survival demands. Thick woolens, sturdy boots, and enough food to see us through until the earth remembers how to grow again. We brought armour and weapons as well, polished and ready. Rebuilding a kingdom is difficult work, and it helps tremendously if one is not immediately conquered while doing it. And of course we packed a few comforts worth defending. Wheels of good cheese, casks of proper ale, and smoked meats rich enough to make even northern stoicism soften around the edges. If we must rebuild from ruin, we may as well do so with decent provisions and excellent morale. Rebuilding begins. Hodor took charge of the roof repairs at once, hauling beams and setting stones, with the steady focus of a man who has decided gravity is merely a suggestion. Somehow, by dusk, the sky was no longer visible from my solar. Burying the past. At last, we laid to rest our most precious cargo, the bones of our mother and father, carried home across leagues of hardship so they might sleep where they belonged. The passage to the crypts had long since collapsed, choked with stone and neglect, so for now the kitchen cellar would have to serve as sacred ground. and if he must watch over us still, he may as well do so near the bread and the ale. Gathering. That evening, we came together in the ruined Great Hall to share our first meal home, raising cups to the north that had taken us back and to Sam and Gilly, beginning their new life beneath Winterfell's broken, stubborn roof. Sleep did not come easily. Some of us worked by torchlight, mending what we could, while others curled beneath furs in whatever shelter we had wrestled back from ruin. Winterfell breathed again, but not yet peacefully. The night settled heavy around us, full of creaks, wind and memory, the sort of silence that listens closely as though waiting to see what we will become next. First morning, dawn found us weary to the bone, yet a stubborn few rose with the light. Rickon wasted no time returning to the courtyard, venting his restless energy on the saplings that had dared grow in our absence. The beasts demanded attention next, and Arya and Bran gladly took the task, happiest in the open air, where they remained from first light until dusk. Boredom. Though Sam now serves as my maester, there is no proper study yet to claim and so no lessons to pursue. I found myself with an unfamiliar abundance of time and far too few proper queenly duties to fill it. So I volunteered to care for little Amy, a responsibility both noble and practical. Between tending to him, I wandered the unfinished halls of Winterfell, pacing routes that would one day be corridors again, tracing walls that still smelled faintly of smoke and damp. In truth, I was restless. It felt important to walk them, to imagine what they might become when laughter returns in full. Rickon hauled stone, timber, and anything else not firmly rooted to the ground, working with the tireless focus of someone determined to outrun his own thoughts. Nearby, Sam, Gilly and John laboured over the first pieces of proper furniture, uneven, sturdy and unmistakably handmade. Amateur craftsmen perhaps, but enthusiastic enough to furnish a kingdom. Crash out. At last, even the most determined among us surrendered to exhaustion. Tools were set aside where they fell, half-finished tasks abandoned in quiet truce with the coming night. One by one, the workers drifted toward the small stretches of shelter we had managed to reclaim. Rooms with patched roofs, drafty walls, and floors only somewhat less cold than the ground outside. It was not comfort by any generous measure, but it was progress. They slept hard and without ceremony, wrapped in furs, cloaks, or simple proximity to the nearest source of warmth. And for the first time since our return, Winterfell held not the restless noise of labour, but the deep, steady breathing of people who had earned their rest. Early morning caravan. A trade caravan from House Oswin arrived at first light, rumbling through the gates while most of Winterfell still slept off the previous day's labours. Northerners all, loud, cheerful, and entirely incapable of arriving quietly anywhere. One among them was a werewolf, the first I had ever seen, and she shifted from wolf to woman before my very eyes while I practiced archery in the courtyard. I held my stance admirably, I think. though my arrow landed somewhere considerably less dignified than intended. They traded in art and other fine treasures far beyond what we can reasonably afford while rebuilding a kingdom from rubble. Still, they brought something rarer than luxury: voices, laughter, and the warm chaos of company. Their boisterous northern antics echoed through the keep, filling every hall with noise and good humour, which the sleep-starved Starks endured with varying degrees of patience and only mild visible suffering. Taming hedgehogs. After a long and well-earned rest, everyone returned to their labours with renewed determination, as though sleep had sharpened both their strength and their stubbornness. Gilly, however, soon found herself weary of walls and rafters and the endless small tasks of indoor work. Deciding that little Aemon deserved a proper companion, something small, gentle, and suitably adorable, her search led her to a hedgehog which she attempted to befriend with great sincerity and only moderate strategy. The effort was cut short when a giant hornet took offence to the proceedings and gave chase with unmistakable authority. Gilly retreated with admirable speed and after careful reconsideration decided that any future pet hunting would take place much closer to the safety of the keep. A cosy evening. At last I claimed a reasonably clean corner of the hall and laid out my books. It felt gloriously ordinary to study again. I kept Aemon beside me while the others carried on with their rebuilding, pausing between pages to steady his curious hands or murmur commentary he did not request. The keep was beginning to sound like itself again, boots on stone, laughter in the corridors, northerners arguing about timber as though it were a matter of high statecraft. Before we retired, we unpacked and armed ourselves with the last of our weapons, blades newly oiled and bows strung tight. Today brought friends and trade. But the North has a habit of sending surprises, and I would rather greet the next one prepared. Tutoring Rickon. At last, Rickon's enthusiasm for relentless labour gave way to something gentler. He began lingering near my studies and the builder's work alike, watching closely, asking questions, touching everything he was politely asked not to touch. I found a quiet relief in it, seeing him curious again, attentive, almost light in spirit. Direwolves go hunting. Finding themselves both bored and apparently dissatisfied with our storage arrangements, the direwolves took it upon themselves to provide for their own needs. Their efforts proved swift and efficient, resulting in one unfortunate lemming and two equally surprised antelope. The pack returned looking immensely pleased with themselves and entirely unconvinced they had done anything out of the ordinary. Care about these consequences. Inspired by the direwolves' recent success, and perhaps a touch too confident in the promise of summer game, Bran set out to hunt caribou of his own. He soon rediscovered that northern wildlife possesses both strong opinions and remarkable coordination. The entire herd chased him back toward the keep at impressive speed, bellowing their displeasure while he shouted for assistance. We rushed out to meet them, newly armed and only moderately prepared for the reality of charging antlers. steel prevailed in the end, though not without considerable effort and several bruises we shall be discussing for days. The evening that followed was quieter. Sam moved from one of us to the next with bandages, salves, and steady patience, while the rest of us nursed our aches and agreed, without needing to say it aloud, that the North remains very much alive. Homesickness. Arya rose before dawn in rare and radiant spirits, greeting the morning with ale and archery in equal measure. Her good humour spread through the keep faster than sunlight and proved far more welcome. A chicken, less discerning in its choices, sampled spoiled provisions and promptly introduced vomiting to our list of daily challenges. The consequences spread with alarming efficiency. Arya later rode out in determined pursuit of the elusive hedgehog, but returned without prize or glory. The hedgehog, it seems, remains undefeated. We formally rechristened the settlement Winterfell, and with each repaired wall and mended beam, the keep began to feel less like a ruin and more like a home remembered. Jon and Bran continued their slow recovery, while elsewhere the food sickness made its rounds, claiming old Nan at last, who was settled into the infirmary, which still rather resembles a barracks with medical ambitions. 5 days in and Winterfell still stands. Louder, warmer, and somewhat more chaotic than I had envisioned, but standing all the same. We have faced charging caribou, questionable poultry, and our own lingering wounds. Yet each morning finds us rising again. If this is what rebuilding feels like, bruised, noisy, imperfect, and stubborn, then I believe we are precisely where we ought to be.